everyone, welcome back to another week of Cooking with Square Food. This week we are going to do a take on a jerk chicken. We're also going to serve that with some rice and peas, which is a lovely coconutty rice with some kidney beans in it. So I'm just going to show you how to start off by marinating the chicken, and that's the most important part. So if you do this part first, ideally leave it overnight, if not sort of 30 minutes to an hour sort of minimum. That's going to really intensify the flavour and make it absolutely delicious. And we're going to bring a bit of sunshine to a gloomy week. So the ingredients that we're going to use, first of all, we've got some spices. I've got a tablespoon of ground allspice, half a teaspoon of some cinnamon, half a teaspoon of some ground nutmeg, and half a teaspoon of some black pepper. I've got a tablespoon of dark brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of some soy sauce, some spring onions, we've got 4 of those, a lime, we've got some lovely fresh thyme, and then the important ingredient, and try not to leave these out if you can, are the amazing Scotch bonnet chilies. Have a look at those. They're just the most beautiful thing. They are very, very spicy though, so if you are cautious about spice, maybe just put 1 or a quarter in, depending on the level of spice that you can take. Or if you really like that heat, then I'd suggest putting in the 2. Most of the heat of the chili is in the seeds, so you can scrape those out in the membrane as well. So that's a good way of sort of reducing the heat. But they have this beautiful flavour, and that's really important in this dish. And then finally, we're going to marinate this lovely chicken. So I've got a free range chicken here, so we've got 2 thighs and some drumsticks. I think you're going to be getting legs. We'll have a see, which is basically when the drumstick and the thigh are together. So we're going to marinate those, and then I'll show you how to make the rice later. So make sure you have everything ready before you get started. We're going to start off by chopping the spring onions. You just want to get rid of the slightly darker end of the spring onion. So if you just lop those off, and then you're just left with the sort of paler green and the white part of the spring onion like this. And we're just going to chop this finely. So if you have a stick blender or a food processor or a pestle and mortar, we're going to put all of these ingredients together and blend it into a nice sort of smooth paste. If you don't have anything like that, you can just chop through with a knife until you get a sort of firm paste, but it just might take slightly longer, and you'll have to keep chopping things until they're really small. So just go over them back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth like this until everything is really small if you haven't got a food processor. I'm going to put all of this into a bowl, and I'm going to use a stick blender to make mine. So the spring onions are done. The next thing that we're going to do is to add the thyme leaves, and we need about a tablespoon of fresh thyme leaves. So you just want to pick the leaves off the stalk, and the easiest way is just to pull against the grain of the big parts of the thyme, and that will just go in like that. If you don't have fresh thyme, you can use dry, just use slightly less because it's quite an intense flavour. And then we're just going to start off by blending that a little bit until it's a smooth paste with the spices. So all of these spices are going to go in here. And just to give it a little bit of liquid, I'm going to put in the soy sauce as well. So it's looking sort of quite dark and rich there, so I've just given it a little bit of a blitz. So the next thing that I'm going to do is add the brown sugar. And then we're going to prepare the chilies. And for preparing the chilies, I'm actually going to put some gloves on because they are quite hot. So if you've got some marigolds or some rubber gloves somewhere that you can pop on, just saves you the risk of getting it in your eyes a bit later. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take off the tip of the chili. And isn't that a thing of beauty? It looks like a flower, it's amazing. I'm going to cut that in half, and then I quite like it to really feel quite spicy, so I'm just going to leave the seeds in, but if you don't, just take them out. And the best way to do that is to use a spoon just to scrape them out and put the seeds straight in the compost or the bin. And then we're just going to roughly chop that. Again, if you don't have any way of sort of blending something, just really go over the chili with a knife until it's really small. with the rest of the ingredients. And you're just going to keep adding things until you get a nice thick paste. But it has this beautiful fruity smell, it's incredible. So all of that chili is going to go into the marinade ingredients. And I'm going to keep my gloves on because I'm going to rub the marinade into the chicken in a little bit. But the last thing to add in is our lime juice. So we want the juice of 1 lime. So again, like last week with the quesadilla, you want to rub or sort of roll the lime just to open up the cell walls and get the juice flowing. Cut the lime in half and then squeeze all of that lime juice into the marinade mixture. So you can see in there I've got the chili, the sugar and the spring onions, the spices and the soy sauce and the lime juice now. So I'm just going to give it a final blend and make sure it's a really nice thick paste, and then I'll show you how to marinate the chicken. So in there is a nice smooth paste. It's got a few little bits of chunks still in from the chili, but keep going. If you've got a food processor, it will blend it until it's really nice and smooth. And same if you're just doing a paste with a knife, just keep going until it's really sort of nice and small. So what you want to do with the chicken is place your chicken on a clean chopping board, take a knife, and then you're just going to cut down to the bone. So you're going to do a couple of slashes of onto the chicken like that to open it up, so that you can make sure that the marinade goes in. And you want to do that with the drumsticks and the thighs. Just give them a couple of cuts. And then the best part is just to pop that all into the marinade, and then using your gloved hands again, just make sure that you rub that all into the meat. And then I'm going to leave this overnight and then come back to it tomorrow, and the flavour will just be that bit more amazing. So if you can see in there now, all of the meat's covered. I'm just going to pop that with a little bit of cling film or a plate on top of the bowl. Just make sure you give everything a really good wash, just in case the chili has got onto the chopping board or the knife, and then also make sure that you give your hands a wash, just in case any little bit of the marinade has gone anywhere near it. Especially if we've handled raw meat, we have to be extra careful. The chicken has been marinating overnight, so I've just taken it out of the fridge about an hour ago, so it's just come up to room temperature. So all I'm going to do is just place it carefully using a spoon into my baking dish. I'm going to go in the oven for about an hour to an hour and a half until the chicken is really lovely and tender and just falls off the bone. Make sure you get all of the marinade out of the bowl as well, and then just give your hands a wash afterwards, just in case you've got any of that marinade on there, because it will still be very hot from the chili. There's the chicken in there. I put it skin side up, and then I'm just going to use some tin foil and just cover that. So covered in foil. What we want to do is cook it for about 45 minutes first with the foil on, and then we're going to remove the foil for the last bit of cooking, just to get a nice bit of colour on that skin. So in it goes. So while the chicken is cooking, you can get on with making or preparing your rice ingredients. So I'll just talk you through the rice and peas. So traditionally in Jamaica, kidney beans are called peas, but obviously they are kidney beans. So we're just using a can of kidney beans. So you want to drain those and then fill your can up with water, because that's the amount of liquid that we'll need. We're also going to use a can of coconut milk. We've got an onion that is diced, just one onion. We've got some spring onion, 2 of those, which we're going to finely slice. A little bit of coriander just to sprinkle on the top. About 3 or 4 spots of thyme, they're just going to go in whole, and we'll remove those later. We're going to chop and crush our garlic into our usual lovely paste. And then I've got another Scotch bonnet chilli, which I'm going to put into the rice whilst it's cooking. It's just going to add its flavour, but no spice. So just pop that straight in, and then we'll remove it before we eat it. And then we've got 300 grams of some long grain rice. So I'll just show you how to prepare that. First thing you'll want to do is just wash your rice. So just to show you a good way of washing the rice, what I do is I put the rice in a sieve and then just dunk it in a bowl of water. And keep sort of running the tap over it, and then when you want to get rid of the water, you can just lift up the rice, and then it's really easy. So you just want to finely slice your spring onion. It doesn't need to be really thin, just sort of quite into nice little pieces, and just make sure that you take off the really sort of dark end of your spring onion, because that's not particularly nice to eat. And then our usual, we've just peeled our garlic, we're going to give it a good old whack and roughly chop it to just mince it. So you can put a little bit of salt on there as well, just to help break it down if you like. So when you're making rice, you want to make sure you've got a saucepan that has a lid, or if you don't have a saucepan with a lid, just make sure you put like a plate over the top, because you really want to keep in the steam when you're cooking this rice. So I'm just going to put a good drizzle of oil in my saucepan, turn the heat on to a medium heat, and I'm going to add in my diced onion and my garlic and my spring onions. And we're just going to cook those off until they're sort of translucent, so about 5 minutes to 10 minutes will do. We just don't want to get any colour on it, that's the most important thing. Some salt in, I just find that helps soften down the onions a little bit as well. So if you can see in there, it's just all lovely and cooking away. Not too much oil, but enough just to help it sweat down. So the onion has been steaming for about 5 minutes now, so it's just turned slightly translucent, so that's perfect, that's what we want. So all that's left to do is to add in our drained and washed rice. Give that a really good stir in with the onions and the garlic and the spring onions. You kind of just want to coat the rice in all of that lovely flavour. Make sure you scrape down the edges of the saucepan, because there's nothing worse than the odd bit of rogue crunchy rice. So when you add in the liquid, just make sure you sort of run it down the side of the pan just to help you get all of those little bits out of the way. And then we're going to add in the water in the reserved can of the kidney beans. So if you can see that, I'm just running it down the side of the pan. And then all of the can of coconut milk as well. And often with coconut milk, you'll find that there's a really thick layer of the cream that floats to the top. So you just want to get your spoon in there and just pull that out. It's really lovely and thick. Can you see that? Almost looks like ice cream or yogurt. So all of that's going to go in, and then underneath is the liquid. And then you just want to make sure you scrape out all of the contents of the can. You don't want to lose any of that lovely liquid. And the coconut milk just adds this beautiful sweetness and richness and creaminess. Absolutely delicious. So we're just going to give that a really good stir up and bring it to the boil. And then we're going to add in our thyme and our scotch bonnet and our kidney beans. We're going to pop a lid on, and then we're going to reduce the heat to a sort of medium. It just wants to simmer at that stage. And then we are going to cook it for about 15 to 20 minutes. The most important thing with rice is once it's gone in and you've given it a little bit of a stir to begin with, we don't really want to disrupt it much more than that. So put your spoon away, don't stir it after that stage, and when it's cooked, you just want to leave the lid on for about 10 minutes just to steam, and that will fluff the rice up and make it really delicious. So this is boiling away now, so I'm just going to add in most of that thyme, probably about 3 sprigs of thyme. We'll just pull those out later so they can go in whole, and that Scotch bonnet chilli as well, so I'll just leave that in whole. And then finally our kidney beans. Traditionally it's done with dried kidney beans that you soak overnight and then cook in with the coconut milk and the water. But just to speed things up for convenience, it's absolutely fine to use a tin of kidney beans. So, lid goes on. I'm going to drop the temperature down to a medium heat and then cook it for 15 to 20 minutes. So the rice has had about 15 minutes now, and you can see almost all the liquid is gone, but it's still got a little bit left, so it just needs another 5 minutes of cooking. I'm still not going to stir it, I'm just going to let it be and pop the lid back on. And keep cooking for that last 5 minutes. So I've just taken the foil off the chicken, and as you can see it's already looking delicious, and then I'm going to cook it for another half an hour without the foil on, and that should make it lovely and crispy and delicious. So I've just turned off the heat now, and you can see it's still steaming away, but all the liquid has gone now. So I'm just going to pop the lid on for about 10 minutes to let it sort of fluff up and carry on steaming, and then we'll take out the Scotch bonnet and the thyme stalks. So this has had 10 minutes of just steaming away, so I'm just going to remove the Scotch bonnet chilli and the thyme. You can just move that to one side. And then just using a fork, you just want to sort of fluff up the rice. And you can add a little bit of seasoning at this stage as well, a bit of salt and pepper. But you can see that is looking lovely. So before serving, you just want to scatter it with a little bit of coriander and then bring that to the table. And it's just really light, it's not a particularly strong flavour, but do make sure you add some seasoning to it. But it just works really nicely with the chicken as well. So look at that lovely chicken. It's got really lovely sort of caramelized bits on the top of the skin. And there's still a little bit of the sauce left over, which will be delicious drizzled over it. This is enough for just 2 people, so you'll get extra than this. So that's absolutely fine. There's still enough marinade for that. So I'm just going to serve it up with the rice and then show you what it should look like. So there we go, finished dish. Just drizzling over a little bit of that extra marinade. And that looks delicious. I hope you enjoy it. Please send us your pictures and videos of you cooking. As always, we absolutely love seeing what you're up to.